Hey everyone, it's patch 3.2 Ancestor, and I wanted to talk about a really interesting interaction that's going to be possible due to the new mechanic that's being added to the game, which are skill tree tattoos. Now, I want to show one of them specifically that's basically going to guarantee be in the game. And then I want to talk about two possibilities that could also happen depending on which other tattoos they're going to add into the game that we haven't seen yet. So today we're going to be talking about this one right here, the Tattoo of Nagahu. Now, what this does is it's going to allow you to replace a strength passive skill point with a passive skill point that gives you 8% increased fire resistance. Now, this on its own is pretty decent, especially if we combine it with the new chieftain, because we can then take Tasalio and make that 8% fire resistance node also give us 4% cold and lightning resistance, making it a pretty decent swap, especially if you don't need the strength, and especially because it will make it so you most likely would not need a single resistance roll on any of your gear, assuming you actually convert enough of these into fire resistance rolls. Now we can take that a step further. This I would say is maybe a typical Marauder pathing. It's a little bit awkward because typically people don't path through Diamond Skin, but with this interaction, it actually will be very much worth it to path through Diamond Skin. So what we're going to be talking about is this right here, the Red Nightmare. What this does is it gives you 8% of Fire's extra chaos, which I guess is a little bit of extra added damage if you're playing a fire build. But the thing we're looking for is the passives granting fire resistance or all res and radius also grants block chance at 50% of the value. Now, with this and this pathing like so, we can actually make some really silly power out of just one gem socket. So in this radius, there are 7 strength small passive points. If we were to turn all of these into fire resistance points, that means that we would be gaining ourselves 56% fire resistance for free. Now with Tasalio as well, converting that into cold and lightning, we'd actually be getting 38% cold and 38% lightning resistance as well. This is also because we're picking up a 5% all res node and a 15% all res node, which would also be double dipping and converting into even more lightning and cold. So that means in this spot right here, with all of these strength nodes being turned into fire nodes, we actually get a decent amount of our resistances just handled for us. We'd be at 40% fire, 14% cold, and 14% lightning just for free. And on top of that, since this gives us block chance at 50% of the value, that means that we are effectively very close to block chance cap. This is simply being done with just a Pinnacle Tower Shield, which is 25% block chance, and then the jewel itself would be giving us 28% attack block on top of it, effectively giving us a really tanky character for just one jewel socket waste. Now, what we could do to pair this even further is we can actually go up here if you're a fire-based build and pick up a fire mastery, which gives us 1 life per second for each 1% uncapped fire resistance. One thing you might actually consider doing is you might want to consider hitting your res cap or the majority of it through simply stacking fire resistance. So on your gear, instead of going for cold or lightning resistance, you just keep stacking fire resistance and you'd be going to 200%, 300%. And the thing about this as well is you most likely will be running a purity of fire with the new chieftain. And because of this, we'd be at 82% fire resistance. And this would also give us an additional 20% cold and lightning. So it'd be at 30% cold and lightning. And if we just keep stacking fire resistance, well, that's going to give us more regen. Currently, it's 82 regen, but we can easily get this to 200, 300 free regen. And we could also just end up pairing that with Hardy to get even more regen on top of it because this increases life regeneration rates. Because of this, we can get quite a lot of regen for free. And it might be a really interesting pick, especially if you are playing as a chieftain. Now, this could be done as anything over here. You don't necessarily have to do this as a marauder. You could also do this as a Templar. You could do this as a duelist and simply just path through the outside and maybe consider picking up Diamond Skin. But as a chieftain, this is extremely powerful. Now, what I want to also mention is depending on what happens with these tattoos, because I don't think these are going to be all tattoos, I'm going to assume that there's going to be an intelligence and a dexterity version of this to where we'll also get 8% cold and 8% lightning respectively. I know we have the dexterity movement speed one and the int flat lightning one, but honestly, I'm going to assume there's going to be 2 for each, one that gives resistance and one that gives some other stats. And we've been shown the other 2 for int and dex. So if that is true, we can actually explore what the other nightmare gems also look at. If we look at the blue one, for example, this is a pretty typical witch pathing for a Aegis Aurora / max block build. So typically here, what we would do is we'd pick up Thread of Hope and we pick up Glancing Blows. So it doubles our effectiveness to block. And typically typically we end up picking this node up here and we go path through the bottom nodes with a Tempest Shield, or we path through the top nodes and get rid of the bottom nodes if we end up buying a Divergent Tempest Shield, which would allow us to block cap without needing these small nodes at the bottom. Well, what if I told you you don't even need Tempest Shield anymore? So assuming that there will be a tattoo for 8% laning resistance for intelligence points, well, simply with this pathing alone, we can completely drop the need for Tempest Shield. So currently we are 15% overcap. And currently we are pathing through 4 intelligence nodes. Now, what Blue Nightmare does is it takes lightning resistance or elemental resistance and gives us spell block at 50% of the value. If we are also picking up Cruel Prep, that means this is going to give us a little bit of spell block. And if we are turning these nodes into 8% lightning res, they would then become 4% spell block. But then because we have glancing blows, it'd be doubled to 8%. So these 4 nodes on their own would give us 32% block chance. If we were to take off Tempest Shield, you could see that currently we are at 36%. If we were to add the 32 on top of it, we would be at 68. And if we picked up just 1 more intelligence point, so either just wasting this 1 passive point here, we would then be almost spell block capped. Or if you instead pathed like this, which some witch builds actually do, instead of going left like this small node is actually within the radius. So for no additional passive points on your end, you could actually hit spell block cap with just simply your pathing nodes. Now this would mean you would lose a little bit of ES if you're an Aegis build, but I honestly feel like the trade-off is worth it, especially considering you're getting a whole aura back. You simply are just getting 25% of your reservation. We will see what happens with these, and we'll see if the tattoos do give us 1 for each resistance, but this will be an especially powerful setup for any sort of blocking witch build. Lastly, which I honestly think is probably just as strong, is what we could do with the Green Nightmare. Now, Green Nightmare gives us spell suppression at 70% of the value of cold and elemental resistance. Now, this again would be a pretty typical setup for a bow-based or elemental attack-based ranger setup. With this, as you can see, we are currently at 54% spell suppression chance. The only node here that would be weird / a node that isn't normally taken would be Survivalist. But with this setup, I definitely feel like Survivalist is actually worth picking up, especially since it gives you so many resistances and since it gives you a 7% spell suppression. Currently, we are at 54% spell suppression. And if we look at this setup, we currently have 6 dexterity nodes within the radius of the gem. With just these 8 nodes, we would be getting ourselves 48% cold resistance, and at 70% value, we'd be giving ourselves 33% spell suppression, which means we'd be at 87.6% spell suppression just from these nodes. Now, if we decided to also add in Revenge of the Hunted and assume we're always going to be at full life, which is probably always true, that means we would have 97% spell suppression with no spell suppression on any of our gear and with no additional passive points. We can either just accept that we're at 97 or just choose to take spell suppression as lucky and then effectively be at 100% spell suppression, or you can get 1 spell suppression roll literally anywhere, or just choose to pick up Quick Step, which is 13% spell suppression, and then truly be at 100% spell suppression cap. This, in my opinion, I think is also really, really strong because spell suppression is typically pretty difficult to get, and it comes in such small amounts on your gear that it typically makes it, 1, very difficult to find good spell suppression gear because it's so hard to roll it plus good stats, and 2, it should save you quite a lot of stat budget on your gear, especially since you're getting a lot of cold for free and a lot of spell suppression for free, effectively removing that need off of gear and allowing you to either get more resistances or get some other influence modifiers. Overall, I think the 3 Nightmare Jewels will finally see some use again. Typically, these have not been good for a very long time. The last time I even remember one of the Nightmare Jewels being even slightly relevant was back in Delirium and Metamorph days, where Green Nightmare was actually really good for Ranger, as it was one of the best ways to get frenzy charges. But ever since the rework, these have been kind of useless, and it's actually kind of cute to see that we will see some use out of all of them. We know for sure that Red Nightmare is going to definitely be used, as the interaction is already in game, but we do not know for sure if the Green Nightmare and Blue Nightmare interactions will be there. Again, all depending on if we do get other resistance tattoos for the other 2. But if we do, I can expect all 3 of the nightmares, especially the blue one, to be worth quite a lot of money and to be included in most endgame builds, just because of the sheer amount of pressure that it removes off of your gear and the sheer amount of stats that you get for such a small expenditure. I feel like whatever power that you had previously that you'd have to be giving up for it is more than made back up with the defensive measures that each of these jewels can give you. That's all I really have for this. I just want to show you guys the interaction. I hope to see you guys in the next one. And if you have any questions, feel free to either leave them in the comments below or to ask me on Twitch. I stream every single day, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have there as well. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next video.